Thank you, Christy, and thank you to all of you for joining us today to learn about Read Live. I appreciate you taking time out of what I know is a very busy time of the year in the life of a teacher. So we're excited to have you here with us today. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about our Read Live program. The programs that are a part of the Read Live platform include Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-Ups Live, 1 Minute Reader Live, and Read Naturally Live Español. Our Read Live platform is a comprehensive research-based reading intervention. Read Live consists of 4 research-based programs developed by Read Naturally and used in thousands of schools. All of the programs in Read Live allow you to easily differentiate instruction in an RTI or MTSS model, and Read Live can be used anywhere in the classroom and for remote learning. Today, we're going to specifically be talking about a strategy for helping students improve their fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. As we talk, however, we want you to keep in mind that there's more to reading development than fluency, and the strategy you'll see today is not a total reading program. Our strategy we're sharing should be used as one part of a structured literacy program that also includes grade level instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension. Let's start out by talking about fluency. What exactly is fluency? Well, we know that fluent readers are students who are able to read with appropriate speed, accuracy, and proper expression. Non-fluent readers are those who struggle in at least one of these aspects of reading. They tend to make many mistakes, they read slowly, or they don't read with appropriate expression and phrasing. So why the focus on fluency? Well, for many years, educators have recognized that fluency is an important aspect of reading, and reading researchers agree. There's over 30 years of research indicating that fluency is one of the critical blocks of reading because fluency development is directly related to comprehension. Now, how directly related is it? Let's take a look at the results of one study that showed how oral reading fluency correlates highly with comprehension. To interpret this type of information or this type of data, a perfect match would be 1.0. And as you can see, oral recall, filling in the blank, answering questions are all highly correlated. However, oral reading fluency has the highest correlation with a 0.91. Dr. J. Samuels, a professor and researcher well known for his work in fluency, put forth a theory called the automaticity theory. According to Dr. Samuels, people have a limited amount of mental energy. If you want to multitask or become proficient at a complex task, such as reading, you first need to master the component tasks so you can do them automatically. For example, a reader who must focus their attention on decoding words may not have enough mental energy left over to think about the meaning of text. However, a fluent reader who can automatically decode the words can then give their full attention to comprehending the text. To become proficient readers, our students need to become automatic so they can pay attention to the meaning. So what does this automaticity look like? Well, we're going to do a little activity here. To illustrate just how automatic we are all at reading, please read these words in unison when I say begin. Ready? Begin. Okay, I'm going to ask you to stop. I'm imagining that that was pretty easy for you to read, but let's change the rules. This time, instead of reading the words, I'd like you to just name the colors of the letters in each of the words. Ready? Begin. And you can stop. So if you're like me, you probably found that task much more difficult. It tends to be difficult to name the colors because we're already automatic when we read these words. Sometimes we just can't even stop reading the words, even when we're making an effort not to. Since you're automatic readers, you can then put all of your mental energy into meaning, which consequently, while you read, then you're able to do those important things like comparing the characters you're reading about, making predictions about the outcomes, even doing a little soul searching. And that is where we want all of our students to get. I'd like you to picture for me a non-fluent reader. Bring that student to mind that you know needs some fluency support. I think you would agree with me that that student may read real slowly. They are uncertain when they get to a sight word. They might read word by word. They maybe ignore some punctuation, and they tend to make many errors. Now, do all students read this way? Absolutely not. If a student is already reading fluently and comprehending the text, that student probably doesn't need a reading intervention. But for our developing readers or students who struggle with fluency, a supplemental reading intervention program like Read Live can truly benefit the students. So how do we identify which students need a reading intervention and which students should focus on other aspects of reading? Well, the answer is simple. You just need to listen to each student read aloud. You already just thought about what a non-fluent reader sounds like, but there's also some research on reading rates that we can use to determine which students need a reading intervention. I'm assuming all of you have seen an oral reading fluency norms table, but if you haven't, here is an example of a table put out by Hasbrook and Tyndall. This table shows the reading development of typical students across the United States, and it's based on the work of Jan Hasbrook and Gerald Tyndall. They combine data on thousands of students from across the country to create the norms that you see here. You'll notice on these norms that it shows the reading rates of students in first through sixth grade. Previous research indicates that a words correct per minute at the 50th percentile in sixth grade and above, it remains about the same. So if you work with students above the sixth grade, you can compare sixth grade norms to your older students as well. As you look at these norms, I want you to also remember these are numbers, but it's the trends that are most important, not the individual numbered score. So let's take a look at a third grader. A typical third grader in the fall who's at the 50th percentile is going to read right around 83 words correct per minute. And as you look across the row for a third grader, you'll notice that what happens is that score continues to go up. That score continues to go up across all the grade levels as you look at the table from fall to winter to spring. But let's look a little bit closer and consider what happens to a third grade student whose average fluency rates are above the 50th percentile in the fall, compared to a third grade student whose average fluency rates are below the 50th percentile. That fairly proficient third grade student might have an average fluency rate in the fall of around 104 words correct per minute, and they advance to the spring and they're reading 139 words correct per minute. But that struggling third grade student might only come in with an average rate of 59 words in the fall, reaching an average of 91 by spring. Do you see what the problem is here? There is a big gap. While both students made progress throughout the year, and we need to honor that growth, there is still a difference between where that struggling third grader was in the spring compared to where that student performing at the 70th percentile, 75th percentile in the fall was performing at. So we know which students are going to need some help by looking at the norm-based table. So now we need to decide, what are we going to do with these students? But before we move on, I just wanted to point out one thing. You see this score here. This is a ceiling of where most students and adults will start to max out. Most students and adults are going to read between 150 and 200 words correct per minute. So we know that when they get to that, that's where we want them to be. But we also know that students who will need a fluency building intervention that supports comprehension, vocabulary, and possibly further diagnosis are those who are scoring 10 words or more below the 50th percentile, using the average score from 2 or 3 unpracticed readings at their grade level. So before we move on, just take a second, find the grade level of the students that you are working with, and look here at the fall scores and think about where your students are at. And no, we kind of would recommend, or not we kind of, we would recommend a fluency intervention for any students scoring 10 or more words below this 50th percentile. So now moving on, let's talk about what students need in order to become fluent readers? Well, we know students become fluent by reading, and some students will learn to read fluently without any explicit instruction. For others, however, that fluency does not develop in the course of normal classroom instruction. The National Reading Panel has suggested that just encouraging students to read independently is not going to be the most effective way to improve their achievement, because too often at-risk students, when they're encouraged to read, aren't necessarily reading, let's say during your sustained silent reading time, appropriate material for their level. I know when I taught fourth grade, my struggling readers tended to just grab the book that looked like the one that their other classmates were reading. And just pretending to read is not going to get our students to be fluent. If we look at that 10 minutes of independent reading time that happens, a fluent reader might read 2,000 words, whereas a struggling reader might only be reading 500 words. And if you think about this over the course of an entire school year, there's going to be a big difference. So that equal practice time of 10 minutes isn't actually equal practice for that struggling reader. So what can we do? Well, these students need to read more, but just asking them to read on their own often doesn't work. The National Reading Panel has concluded a more effective course of action is to explicitly teach these developing readers how to read fluently step by step. So how do we do that? I'm going to share with you 3 research-proven strategies that will help students become better readers. The first strategy, and this has been shown by the National Reading Panel to be effective, is teacher modeling. Various forms of modeling can improve reading fluency, and some examples include teacher-assisted reading, peer-assisted reading, and audio-assisted reading. So teacher modeling involves more than just listening, though, to somebody else read. Listening to a concert pianist will not make you a concert pianist, and students must actively be involved 100% of the time with the teacher in a multisensory way. Teacher modeling teaches word recognition in a meaningful context, demonstrates correct phrasing, and gives students the practice tracking across the page. Students are ready to participate in an activity that involves teacher modeling once they know 50 sight words and have a good sense of beginning sounds. The next strategy that has been proven to help students become more fluent is repeated reading. Repeated reading has been shown to significantly build reading fluency, and it simply involves reading the same material multiple times to build accuracy and expression. There have been studies that show when students read passages over and over again, they get faster at the passages, they understand them better, and they're able to read subsequent passages better as a result of that repeated reading. And this is because repeated reading is simply a form of mastery learning. Besides helping bring bring those words to mastery for the students, repeated reading also changes the way the students view themselves in relation to the act of reading, and it helps to build their confidence. The third strategy is progress monitoring. Have you ever watched a child, or an adult for that matter, play a video game? They're very intent, right? It's hard to drag them away. And it's because people who play video games are presented with a goal, right? Locate that treasure, beat their best score, get to the next level. They're also presented with immediate, specific, relevant feedback about their progress towards meeting that goal. And that combination of having a goal and then getting feedback on their progress can be very motivating. Well, progress monitoring in reading takes advantage of this to motivate our students to read. When we give our students a specific individual reading goal, tell them exactly how you're going to know that they've met it, then give them the means to measure how well they're doing, making it simple enough that they're going to know they've met the goal even before you, the teacher, does. You've created a system of progress monitoring that motivates students to practice reading the same story over and over again until they achieve that mastery. All of these strategies, teacher modeling, repeated reading, and progress monitoring, can be incorporated into whatever it is you're doing today in your reading program, and you will definitely make a positive difference in how well your students are reading. But now I want to show you how we've combined these strategies into a single, powerful method that improves students' fluency and is built into all of our programs in Read Live. We call it the Read Naturally strategy. And the way it works in Read Live is a student begins by getting a baseline score for progress monitoring. If you look down at the graph in the bottom corner, you'll see that that graph is showing how many words a student read the first time they read a story. We call it their cold score. And it's a timed reading, and that score represents their words correct per minute the first time they've read that story. So now we've got the start of our progress monitoring. Then the teacher or the students roll into teacher modeling. And teacher modeling occurs as the student reads along with an audio recording of the story, subvocalizing with narration. So they're not listening to the narrator, they're reading with the narrator until they're able to read that story without errors. Students will typically read anywhere from 2 to 3 times depending on their age. Next, the student rolls into repeated reading, where they repeatedly time themselves reading the story aloud. They use these scores to check their progress, and then the student keeps reading until they have met their individual goal rate, which was set by the teacher. Finally, or once the student meets that goal, then they're going to go over and do some comprehension questions within the program. So we're going to be looking at how well do they understand what they have read while they're waiting for the teacher to come in and conduct what we call a hot reading. The hot reading is when the teacher listens to the student read. A student who reads with expression at their goal rate with 3 or fewer errors, and this is important, answers all the comprehension questions correctly, passes that story. If you bring your eyes back to the graph down in the corner, you'll see a hot score, which is graphed in red, which gives those students that visual feedback on how much improvement they have made by working on that story. And then as they continue to complete more and more stories, they will see all of their graphs appearing on the screen. And it's a wonderful visual for the child to see, look at that, my blue score, my cold scores are going up, my hot scores are going up. I'm doing good, right? And I often had my students say, "Come and look at my graph, Mrs. Brenner. I want to show you where I'm at." So this strategy, the Read Naturally strategy, was based on a study done by Candace Einot. She's the reading teacher who developed this strategy, and she first combined teacher modeling, repeated reading, and progress monitoring. But she wasn't sure how effective it would be. So she tried this strategy in a third grade collaborative classroom that contained 5 learning disabled students, 2 pre-referral students, as well as 18 Title I students. In phase 1 of her study, she worked with the special education students and used the Read Naturally strategy. According to the Hasbrook and Tyndall norms, a third grade student is typically going to make around an average weekly improvement of around 0.8 to 1.2 words per week. And you can see on the screen there that the students that use the Read Naturally strategy gained 2.35 words per week, in comparison to her Title I students who gained 1.23 words per week. In phase 2 of the study, Candace started using the Read Naturally strategy with her title students as well. And 13 weeks later, those students showed an average fluency gain of 2.15 words per week on their cold readings. There are many other studies, and you can see this in your handout and on our website, that show strong evidence for the effectiveness of the Read Naturally strategy. So let's get into our programs now. Now you know about the strategy that is built into all of our programs. Let's talk about what lives within the umbrella of Read Live. Well, we've got Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-Ups Live, 1-Minute Reader Live, and Read Naturally Live Español. Specifically, let's talk first about Read Naturally Live. This is our flagship program, and it is what is used the most. Read Naturally Live focuses on fluency and phonics while providing additional support in vocabulary, comprehension, and spelling. Students benefit from that additional support as they work through audio-supported steps to read each story accurately and fluently, and then demonstrate their understanding. There are many benefits for students who participate. They're not only motivated to read short nonfiction passages, which build their fluency, but they are also provided with support to increase their accuracy and expression. Their comprehension and vocabulary is strengthened as they read and reread stories. They develop automaticity and decoding through targeted lessons in phonics. They work independently most of the time, yet they have those key teacher touch points where the teacher is working with them and checking their progress. And then students experience that success, which improves their attitude towards reading. There is lots of content available in Read Naturally Live. We have 3 series, sequenced, phonics, and idioms, with 13 levels from 0.8 all the way through 8.0. We include a Spanish read-along option to support your English learners in levels 1.0 through 4.5. The program is appropriate for those whose reading skills are between 1st through 8th grade, and it has an intervention range where it can be used with anywhere from beginning readers to adults who are learning to read. We recommend 3 to 5 sessions of Read Naturally Live per week, with sessions lasting anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And keeping in mind, the more practice the students get, the better they're going to, or the faster they're going to improve. In your handout, you'll see a poster that specifically goes over the 9 steps involved in our Read Naturally Live program. Word Warm-Ups Live is the next program we're going to talk about, and that is our program that focuses on phonics. Students benefit from additional support in fluency, spelling, and phonemic awareness in Word Warm-Ups Live as they work through audio-supported phonics lessons and build their automaticity in decoding. There are many benefits for students who work in Word Warm-Ups Live. Not only do they improve their word recognition skills, but they practice reading words with specific phonics patterns with audio support to build automaticity and decoding. They'll learn to decode increasingly difficult, phonetically regular words. They'll have opportunities to read the words with the featured patterns in connected text. And their phonics skills are reinforced as the students are required to spell the phonetically regular words. There's lots of content available in Word Warm-Ups Live as well. At level 1, they'll be exposed to 1-syllable words. Level 2 brings in 2-syllable words, and level 3 will be their multisyllabic words. Word Warm-Ups Live is appropriate for for readers whose skill level is between 1st through 4th grade, and it also has an intervention range of beginning readers all the way through adults. Word Warm-Ups Live works really well at a Tier 1 setting for independent practice in phonics, like a 10-minute daily warm-up in your classroom, or in Tiers 2 and 3 as an intervention, and then you're going to use it a little bit longer, say 20 to 30 minutes daily, based on the students that you are working with. There's a poster included in your handout on the steps for Word Warm-Ups Live. Moving along, 1 Minute Reader Live is our independent reading program. 1 Minute Reader Live focuses on fluency, and the students also benefit from additional support in vocabulary and comprehension. It is a structured, independent reading program with questions and activities that support vocabulary and comprehension. 1 Minute Reader Live benefits students as they engage in self-directed learning. Students expand their knowledge base by reading interesting nonfiction text. They're also provided with that audio support, which helps them learn those new words, improve their expression. They develop their fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary skills, and they experience success and an improved attitude towards reading. You'll see progress is monitoring on those graphs that you see down in the bottom of the screen, and that again helps students gain the confidence from seeing the success that they are making. There's lots of content available in 1 Minute Reader Live as well. It goes from early reader through mid 5th grade, so there are 6 levels. There are 8 books in each level and 5 nonfiction stories in each book. 1 Minute Reader Live is appropriate for skill levels of 1st through 5th grade readers, and it works as an intervention for your beginning readers all the way through your adult readers. 1 Minute Reader Live is appropriate for readers of all ages who would benefit from a structured independent reading program. It's great to use with your students who are working in Read Naturally Live because they can also work in 1 Minute Reader Live for some extra practice. It's really good for those students who are about ready to graduate from Read Naturally Live. They can transition to 1 Minute Reader Live for a little bit of extra practice to continue working through the strategy. And Read Live can also be set up for students to work in 1 Minute Reader Live while their teachers are busy placing other students in Read Naturally Live. So it's a great use of that independent reading time that you have. You can use it during, like I said, independent structured reading time. It's really good for at-home reading as well as a summer reading program for your students. There's a table that you'll see in your handout as well that compares the differences between Read Naturally Live and 1 Minute Reader Live. You'll just see that Read Naturally Live is not as independent. It's independent most of the time, but it involves some key teacher touch points. But 1 Minute Reader Live can be done all independently. And the only difference in our reports is there's going to be a phonics report included with Read Naturally Live, and then fluency and comprehension reports for both of them. Poster is also included in your handout. And then finally, we're going to wrap up today talking about Read Naturally Live Español. This is our program that focuses on reading fluently in Spanish. Students also benefit from additional support in Spanish vocabulary and comprehension. They work through audio-supported steps to read each story accurately and fluently, and then they demonstrate their understanding by answering questions. There are many benefits for the students that participate in Read Naturally Live. They build their fluency in Spanish by reading short nonfiction passages. They're provided full audio support in Spanish, which helps them increase their accuracy and expression. They gain comprehension and vocabulary skills in Spanish. They work mostly independently, and they experience success and an improved attitude towards their reading. The content available in Read Naturally Live Español include 10 levels ranging from 1.0 to 5.6. All the content and instructions for the students are in Spanish. The student also has access to the instructions in English. When teachers are interacting with students, they will be given an English teacher menu, and the past review screen can be viewed in either English or Spanish as the teacher and the student meet together. So this program is appropriate for students whose reading skills are between 1st and 5th grade reading level in Spanish, and the intervention range is again beginning readers through adults who need to work on these skills. Read Naturally Live Español is appropriate for a variety of scenarios. First, it's appropriate for a native Spanish speaker to develop their Spanish reading skills. It's also appropriate for native Spanish speakers to support their vocabulary and comprehension while they're learning to read in English. And it's appropriate for native English speakers or speakers of other languages to learn to read Spanish text fluently as a second language. To see students make progress, they should work in Read Naturally Live Español for 30 to 45-minute sessions 3 to 5 times per week. And some of the program comparisons between Read Naturally Live and Read Naturally Live Español you can also see in your handout, as well as the poster. So as we wrap up today, it looks like we're right on the half-hour point here. Just a brief recap, we talked about Read Live, which is our suite of interventions that includes Read Naturally Live for building fluency, Word Warm-Ups Live for phonics, 1 Minute Reader Live for that independent reading experience, and Read Naturally Live Español. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll be happy to get back to you, even if your questions come up in a day or two as you're thinking about our program. And I just want to say thank you for joining us today. Please respond to the survey questions that appear on your screen after our webinar so we can continue to improve the educational experience for all of you and our future webinars. Again, thank you for joining us today, and I wish you all a wonderful school year. Bye-bye.